understand who I am and I understand who you are and why did God put us together in that season. There was something to learn. So we'll talk about that. So yeah, go ahead and say hi to the people and then we'll get started.
Hey, hi everybody. I'm Apostle Michael Scott. I'm from Youngstown, Ohio, and just glad to be able to share with you on this morning, and glad to be able to receive from you, because it's a reciprocal process. We give and we receive, and you have to learn how to receive just as much as give. You know, God always have a balance and a circularity of things. You know, things have to be circular. You have to give and receive. That's the motion of life, the motion of death, life, death, that you have to learn how to do both. And so I'm ready to deposit and I'm ready to receive deposits. And you have to be open to that. And I think one of the most challenging things that when a person get into a leadership position, they have to be comfortable in their own skin, or they'll try to prove themselves when there's nothing to be proven, and it begins to become a burden on those that's under them because they're operating from a different perspective. You know, by the time God places you in a place of leadership, you should have been settled some things in yourself because you've been through some things. Wow. You've been through some things, and God has shown you who you are, and you don't have to always get validated from others. Like I was saying one time, dead works is really seeking the validation of men over the will of God in your life. And that's basically what dead works is all about. And we're operating in dead works till we get to a place where we are solidified from God, knowing who we are, knowing we're accepted in the beloved, and knowing that we are sent and called, no matter what others, how they receive you. Because if you're operating from a perspective of character, it's always effective in the atmosphere if a person acknowledges it or not. If you always need people's acknowledgement, then you're going to operate from that perspective, and it's going to curtail what God wants you to do.
Wow, yeah, that's incredible. Now, did you always have a mindset and an attitude to receive and give, or was that a journey for you? Is that just part of your nature?
That it was a journey. It was a journey. My journey started. I was in a church, a fairly large church in this area at the time, and when I came in, I was how can I say? I was soaking up everything. I wanted to soak up everything, and I didn't miss a service. We had continuous services at that church. But the thing about it was that God will see you and see your gifting even in the midst of a place that isn't operating like the gifting. The place where I was at was very legalistic and everything, but God saw my gifting. He made me the teacher over the ministers and elders when I was only saved for maybe a year and a half. He elevated me to be a teacher even over the elders in that church. And then later on, he put me in a place of being the teachers of the beginners that come into the church. And so he always had a place where he was using me, even though I was, as you say, down the low end of the totem pole. But yet he still found the place to use me. Sometimes you're in what man considers a low place, but God will see your gifting and use it even in that place. I never preached on a Sunday morning, and I was there for 12 years.
Wow.
And I never preached on a Sunday morning. But he had me operating my gift as a teacher in different classes when I shouldn't, by rank and age, been the teacher. But God placed me there because of the gifting that I had. So sometimes you don't have to, God will skip the normal protocol and put you in a place where he wants you to be at.
Man, that's incredible. Now, how was you able to see or accept that even though you never preached for 12 years on Sunday mornings, it was God that put you in these classes to be able to teach leadership at one aspect and then children at another, beginners. Because a lot of times when we see man in control, or we see like I'm being shut down or I'm not being used, we we no longer leave room to see how God is doing. And sometimes the dynamic of not being used on Sundays blind us to anything. How was you able to say that's okay and be comfortable? Or was that a struggle? Even though you were teaching, was there complaints, or was you able to say, you know what, it's okay, I don't have to teach? How did you what was your attitude about that?
Um, to be honest with you, I never really got frustrated to the point where I wanted to verbally attack or cause any type of disruption. What it was getting me to see was that, well, God's preparing you for something else. This ain't your long-term home. That was my mindset, that this isn't your long-term home. And what began to happen was 9 years into that church, God had that pastor who was a superintendent send me down to a little church. It was a 20 by 30 square foot room total building. He sent me down to a little church where the pastor had died, and there was two 80-year-old members. I went to that church on Sunday mornings to preach for 3 straight years. Two 80-year-old people, my 5 little children, and my wife. And we preached in that church for 3 years. And the drug dealer in the neighborhood would come in and drop money in it to keep the place going. But what God was showing me, the 22 elders back at the main church, they ain't preaching on Sunday morning, but he made a way for me to preach on Sunday morning for 3 years, minus the crowd, because he was unhooking me from the crowd. And after I preached there for 3 years to 6 or 7 people, he freed me to go. Then the pastor said, well, now you go do what's in your heart to do. In other words, I thought he sent me down there to break me. You think you want to be a pastor? You're used to 300 people and a 40-voice choir. Let me show you what it really is. And when I went down there and I didn't break, because God was developing my gifting to speak and to teach, after that 3-year period, he released me to go and start a ministry. And I was just seeing how that God picked me out, because there was 22 other ministers and elders there. He picked me out, amen, to have my own platform to prepare me for 3 years, while the other 22, they ain't preaching on Sunday. And so I saw it as my preparation to what God was doing. At first, I'll tell you the truth. At first, I thought I saw it as punishment. He just trying to break me, put me in this little place, make me discouraged. But as I went on, I got stronger. I preached like I was going crazy with 6, 7 people there. And half of it was my family. But it was preparation for what God was doing. So God will see you, pull you out, and prepare you for what he has for you.
Wow. Man, I love you so much, man. I love you, Dad, so much. This is incredible. Okay, so let's move to this text, 2 Kings chapter 2, dealing with the story of Elijah and Elisha and walking with leadership. Has God revealed anything to you as far as the relationship part of that story? What do you see in that story with you two? I read it this morning. I've been going over it. I don't know if I might have preached it. I preached so many texts. I might have preached it, but as I'm looking over it fresh, I never put so much emphasis on the 3 cities they went to. The first city was Bethel, the house of God. The second city was Jericho. The third city, I think it was Jordan. Those 3 they had to cross over, and Elisha stayed with his seen him as a father in all 3 cities. And so I want to deal with that point, how to stay with a leader in the time that God has given you. All the other prophets kept saying to him, your father gonna leave the day, your head gonna leave, your covering is gonna leave the day. And he said, you know what, be quiet, keep that silent. I'm not going nowhere. And when God, I just want to deal with all the aspects, and we're going to be dealing with this all week. So there's a lot to this, but how to stick with a person, how not to feel like you're a flunky, all those different feelings. I'm looking at all that in the text. How do you learn from watching, as you did for 12 years without preaching on Sunday mornings? That thing, and but you may have seen some other stuff. What do you see in that text, or what did God give you when you look at that text?
Well, a lot of things from my own experiences that I see that it comes to walking with a leader. I see some things that were done right, and I see some things that were done wrong. And I think the main thing I get out of that is that the greatest protocol in any relationship is to love and respect each other. In other words, we have a lot of church protocol, but if the foundation ain't on love and respect, then actuality, we're doing a form and a fashion. So there has to be, he stayed with that leader because he respected that leader. And that leader has to reciprocate that respect with love and to be able to honor those that follow after him. It has to be a place where you feel that this leader is someone that I can respect, and that he's hearing from God, and the fact that he's hearing from God, I can respect that and follow it when things get tough. When I think a leader is in his own self and in his own pride, it's hard to follow. I mean, that's just what it is. If we're spiritual people, we're going to follow the Spirit. And when we think the Spirit is not there, then it's going to be hard to follow. So I think the greatest thing is that you still carry that respect for that leader as hearing from God.
That's incredible. That's incredible. In that journey of respect, what do you do? And I'm going to throw a lot of questions at you. I want to really glean your wisdom today. What do you do when the understanding of what respect look like hasn't been fully developed? Because some people see respect as control. Some leaders do. And sometimes some people who are sons see leadership as control. Matter of fact, some people will be more committed to a controlled environment than they will a freedom environment. We have experienced that. So how do you deal with that? How do you deal with people who say, my leader is not respecting me? They don't have respect for who I am nor my gifting. Is there a time when you should leave? Do you leave automatically when you identify that? Or is there wisdom in how to depart? Is there wisdom in how to depart?
I think there should be. I mean, when you get to the place of your leader is not respecting you or whatever, I always ask this question. You can't grade your own paper. I mean, you're going to always give yourself an A. I mean, who's saying the leader ain't respecting you? Is that Satan? Or is that your feelings? Is that how you've been brought? So do you have any confirmation from other things other than how you feel?
Right.
And I had to get to that point too. I mean, is it me? Do I need more development? Because I've seen it on both ends. I've seen people get into themselves and run away because they felt the leader wasn't this and that. And this, I think another thing you got to remember and respect, that leader is there because they went through something to get there. There's a certain amount of grace you have to even be in a leadership position when it's real. Now that leadership can go sour on what brought him to that place, but he done something to get to that place. He had some sacrifices, some weary nights. Sometimes he didn't get instantly zapped into that place and position. Now, once he got there, he can get corrupt and do wrong. And then you have to, just like Saul, David had to respect Saul's position, even though Saul went, the way he went. Right. And sometimes you have to be able to respect the person, the position, even though the person is maybe going wayward. And God will show you how to do that, how to untie yourself when that person has started going down a wrong road. In other words, you have to remain within yourself, not to get corrupt behind what they're doing. And so you have to be led by the Spirit of God and understanding that if it's my time to leave, I'll leave with grace. I'll leave with no intention. Because when I left from the church I was at, the first thing he asked me was, how many people you taking with you? I said, what? I ain't taking nobody but my family. I didn't come here to raid and leave like that. I'm taking my family, and that's all, because God has told me to leave. He didn't tell me to come and raid your church and what you have built and go. Now, if they leave later on their own, that's their own doing, if God deals with them as individually. But I'm going because God has called me to another journey. So I think you have to realize, is there something else confirming this move other than how I feel? That I think, is there something in the spirit that's confirming me leaving other than how I feel?
Wow. And see, and thank you, Dad. That's so great. Because even in this text, we see Elijah know he's moving. He know he's leaving. And once he sees in the text that Elisha follows him in all three of these places, before he departs, he says, what do you need from me? What do you need me to give you? What do you want me to bless you with? And his commitment began to be rewarded before he leave. And I think that's another thing I'm trying to establish in walking with leadership, that we should have leaderships that want to be able to leave a blessing to the sons. Too many sons or too many divisions in leadership, then it has to be a ripping. And then when you go to start your ministry, you still bleeding because you had to get ripped away because there was not a preparation to pass the mantle down or preparation to release that wisdom for you to go. In this story, we see a proper way of releasing. There's accepting that I am going, but there's also a commitment that says, I'm going to stay with you until you leave. You know what I'm saying? And then there is a request from the leader that says, what do you want? And he asked for a hard thing. He said, I want a double anointing. I want a double. He says, you asked for a hard thing. But if you see me going up, if you stay committed until the time of my departure. Now, I believe sometimes in this case, it happens in the physical. We actually saw it. But sometimes the departure it's time to go. Can we have that blessing? Can we have that reward? And how do we have that in the spiritual? There's so many people who are called to be Elishas, but they are bleeding Elishas because we didn't know how to do that. And I think in leadership, because the threat of you taking members from me, the threat of you may be more intelligent than me, you may have a wisdom that God has given you. So what if Elijah already saw he had the ability to carry a double anointing and was threatened by it? In this text, we see a positive. But most time in our lives, if a person notices that you can carry a double anointing or notice you have the ability to be that level of committed and they know that their time is up, they fear that. They fear that. And so how do we work out those things? What is some wisdom in that transition in those things like that?
I think mainly it falls back on that leader to be comfortable in his own skin, in his own stage of life, and in his own season. I mean, it's like, let me use an analogy. The 45-year-old woman shouldn't be competing with the 17-year-old girl that's going to the prom. Her prom days is over.
Right.
You got to realize when it's your time to move into the next season of your life. You can't have an out of season glory. When that glory is over with, there's another glory for the seasoned person. You got to realize you are a seasoned person and there's another glory. You're trying to hang on to a past glory so you can never receive the glory that God has you as a seasoned leader. This, where I was at, this person, he could have had many, many people under him with 30 elders in it. He could establish many things under him, but because he wouldn't release in the right way, then that led things to go down another path. So the leader got to realize his season, be comfortable in his own skin, and want to push his sons as far as they can go. Now the other half is the sons can't push the leader out before he's finished.
Right.
But when he realizes that it's time for them to move on and go, he blesses them and help them to go, because now he's in another stage. He's in a season stage. He's in a sage stage. He's not competing on that platform any longer. And you got to be comfortable where you're at in every season of life.
Wow, that is good. That is good. Dad, oh my God, that is so good. And so we can't push him out at the same time. You can't hold me back, and you can't know.
Right.
Yeah. And you got to know the difference between the season of being a player and the season of being a coach. And I think we haven't learned that. A lot of times, even in football, they may be too old to play football, but they'll start coaching, they'll start narrating, and you'll see that. And their wisdom is given from that platform, because I used to be in the game. Yeah.
You want to see, if a father wants to see sons go greater than him, and a son should not be envious of a father. See, a son should not be envious of a father, and by the same token, a father should not be envious of a son. They should be on the same level. See, covenant is greater than collaboration. Covenant lasts forever. You might collaborate for your own purpose and your own good, and then when you get what you want, it's over. But a covenant is stretched throughout the relationship term as you're together. Some people come to your church. I mean, I had about 5 or 6 over 27 years. I had about 5 or 6 moves. In other words, I'll get a group of people. They'll stay for a while, then they'll leave. I get another group of people, they'll stay for a while, then they'll leave. But the last group of people I got in the last 5 or 6 years, God said, they're here for your ministry. See, everybody that comes ain't there for your ministry. Some people won't come and they want to be a big fish in a small pond. And if they don't do what they want, then they're going on. But then there's some people there because they want the deposit that God placed in you. And you're going to keep filtering through people until that group begins to settle with you. And that's who it's going to be.
Wow. Prophetess Ross, she always say, there's a difference between supporters and pillars. She says some people support you, but they're not the pillars.
They're not pillars.
I borrowed that from her. And
I call them pillars and planks. That's what, pillars build a foundation, but planks, all they can do is put up the sidewalls. They're not foundational,
Wow.
And it takes a long time to build a foundation, but once you get the foundation, the house can go up in 2 days.
Wow. That's good. What would you say some of the dynamics in working with leadership or walking with leadership that you think needs to be re-emphasized or needs to be brought to the front more? What would be some of the strong points of walking with leadership that we should always consider?
I think probably the most thing to consider is you understand their vision. You understand their ability to hear from God. You understand, that where they're going, that God is going to be there to meet you there. You understand that you can watch the character of their life, because your life is your ministry. The character, I don't care how gifted you are, the gifting is from God, but the character is what you develop in the furnace of affliction. And so you can be gifted, but if you don't have character, that ministry will soon not be a ministry of substance. It could be a ministry that draw people because people are drawn, but they won't have any substance in their life once they leave that meeting. So you watch the leader's character even more so than their gifting.
Wow. That's big, Dad. And how would you? What is some of the wisdom that you would say for young people who's coming in, or even some seasoned people that is in the midst of a leadership where the gifting is outstanding but the character is not? What is some of the wisdom? Why are you in that? If God hasn't given you the release to leave yet, or all the different dynamics with that, because it seemed to be now, and I think people like me and you and older generations have to take some responsibility. We have kind of put the gifted people on the platform. We don't spend as much time developing. as we should. And so you have gifted people that are in leadership positions, sometimes spoiled leadership. I'm running into young men and young ladies who are powerful, but they're spoiled, never had any discipline, never had a real father over their life, naturally or spiritually. And so the gifting part has been advertised, it has been displayed, it has been prostituted. And so now to try to have healthy relationships and healthy living is not the case. And sometimes, what do we do in that? How do we fix that? Or, what are some of the things that we can begin to turn that around when you have gifted people but no character? Because the church now is and the crowd is coming, like you said, they don't have any substance, but that's why we'll just make church 3 or 4 times a week, because we don't have to have any substance. We'll just keep you high off of the entertainment of it, or the charismatic drawing power of it. So what would you say to that?
I would say it's like anything else. Whatever you focus on, you draw attention and you bring value to it. If you focus on charismatic gifting and not character, then that's what the people gonna value. But when you start focusing on character and substance, then that's what the people gonna value. We've given people to make people great because of their gifting and not their character. And even when they fall, they still want to follow them because of their gifting. Right. Even though their character has been displayed as being less than desirable, they still have a following because we have valued gifting so much. And gifting can't really do what it should to you unless it comes through the right avenue. In other words, it's like, do I want a clean, juicy steak on a dirty plate? No. I'm going to reject that steak sooner or later if you keep serving it to me on a dirty plate, because I'm not going to want it. So sooner or later, if I teach people, watch what is served on, not just what's being served. Watch what is served on.
Wow.
When you go to the restaurant, don't you look at the spoons and the plates before you eat the food? But you ain't looking at the character before you just gobble up the gift.
Oh my God. Is there any wisdom to redeem people who were raised up by previous fathers to be charismatic over character, and then they run into somebody who makes them aware that character is important and they want to switch, but they are known for their charismatic? What would be some wisdom to help those that say, you know what, I realized I was raised wrong, trained wrong, the wrong thing was given to me to value. I've always valued my charisma, my hooping ability, my ability to draw crowds, and now I realize I got to have a life. How do I make that transition? What would be some of the wisdom to say for a person who wants to change and make character more of a priority than their charisma?
I would say a lot of times you have to show them where their character failed them and their gifting couldn't pull them out. You have to show, their character failed them and their gifting couldn't put them out. So you got to show them that without great character, your gifting is impotent. It can't get you out of certain situations. See, and not to use names, but big famous people, when their character got exposed, their gifting couldn't pull them out. You got to show them the limitations of gifting and the power of character as we compare, because character operates in your everyday 24/7 life. You can get on stage and be gifted for that hour and a half or 2 hours. But the kingdom is not about a 2-hour stage performance. It's about, do I know how to love and enjoy life? Am I content on the inside? In other words, your contentment comes from your personal character. It does not come from people praising you, because on the inside, you tore up from the floor up. You messed up. And in the midnight hour, that's what's going to come on you. And the gifting is going to be nowhere to be found. Who are you in the private moments? That's what, and you have to Place that there and let them see the truth of it and how much it really counts. And that's what the kingdom walk is all about. The kingdom walk is about developing the character of Christ, releasing the DNA of the Father. That's light in dark places. You're not light on the stage of your gifting. You're light in the character as it walks through this world.
Man, incredible. Man, you brought us a point. You said when your character is not developed, you'll find yourself in a pit that your charisma can't get you out. It'll become impotent. And you know, most people have never really seen the impotency of their character because we always looking for a stage to shine it on. And so we do have always say public success with private failure. And a lot of leaders are going through that. And this is where a lot of people may have left churches and the leadership is not focusing on who left. They focusing on who stayed. And so, and this is where you have this at, because sometimes as leaders, especially if you raise up to be charismatic, you won't accept the light that is shining that your character need develop. You may be very gifted, but how you talk to people, how you don't regard family, you know what I'm saying? How you really don't have a care for the community. A lot of these things, or you don't have anything that shines a light on other people's development. Everything is about you and about how well you can do it. And so I love that because most people are not truthful about what is impotent in your gifting. See what I'm saying? Because we think our gifting is producing all kinds of stuff because we're looking at it from the stage point of view. But in your life, it hasn't helped you with your hate. It hasn't helped you with your depression. You're taking pills as a preacher. You're still fearful. All those things, you're impotent in that area because you lack character. Yeah. Man, that is so powerful. And most people who live in the gifting, because I did it for years, you know, I didn't live the life of Christ. I lived the gift of Christ. And so, but I was messed up. I was suicidal, you know, depressed all the time. But people didn't know it because when it comes down to the stage, that's when, you know, I got my celebration. So I let that, I lived two lives, you know, and was raised up to be, especially if you raise up as a child preacher or you raise up as a child musician or whatever, most of the time the people are more concerned about the crowd that you can bring, not the cloud in your personal life, you know, and that prostitution goes on a lot in a lot of our churches because of that, you know, not until the pastor's daughter get pregnant or something comes close, then we start addressing certain issues. But I love that because I had to find that out, that your gifting is limited when it comes to saving your life. And you're called and confused. You're saved and sad. And you're not supposed to be. And then I began to have a love for the life of Christ, which was challenging. Once I had a love for the life of Christ, that was challenging because it wasn't about me preaching no more. It was more about how I'm living every day. And so now, and this is the last piece before we close, how do I identify myself? Because most time my identity came from my performance. My identity came from my gifting. And unless you had a real father, a real Elijah, that this is why we need to walk with leadership. We need a real father, brother, mentor, somebody in your life that says, man, this is your identity, man. This is who you called to be like Christ, and not to go around just blessing people and singing and performing, but lost within. And this is the reason why I'm really dealing with walking with leadership, because how do I find my identity? When I look at my dad, I'm supposed to see something, a reflection of who I am. God made me in his image and likeness for a reason. So talk about the identity piece and the importance of fatherhood and sonship to bring that character alive and not let charisma be the leader.
Well, our identity at first, before we really come to know God, we identify with four things within our natural life. And four, as I said one time, four being the number of the earth. We identify with gender, ethnicity, tribal family, and personal ego. We identify as a male and what that entails. We identify as ethnic group, Black, Asian, whatever. We identify with our tribal upbringing within our family. Then we identify with our personal struggles, our ego. And we try to get an identity from one of those four. But actuality, if we'll become over imbalanced because we're none of those four. We are identified from heaven. And when we really tie into our heavenly identity as a son of the Most High God, then all the dysfunctions that took place in my earthly identification, it begins to be subsided or put underneath. In other words, I'm not downplaying our natural activities and proclivities, because we have experiences, because I was a male, because I was black, because I was a Jones or a William, and because I'm Tom or Joan, whoever. We had experiences from them, but not an identity. We keep drawing our identity from our natural experiences when our identity is from heaven, which should bring our natural experiences under subjection. So I always have to identify first that I'm a heavenly person with a heavenly Father, and he has always loved me. Now, the things I experience here, I have to bring it under. Now, do we know that when we first go? No, we're lost. We're stumbling. I believe I can only operate according to my social economical status, according to what happened in my past. But actuality, who I am spiritually, it supersedes all of those things. And so God is trying to get us to tie back into our real identity. See, we might be in a mess, but we're never a mess. See, we're identifying with the mess we're in as our identity rather than just our environment. Our identity comes to change our environment, not for us to blend in and our environment change our identity. Wow. We've been allowing our environment to change our identity rather than our identity to change our environment. And that's the problem. You got to get people tied back to their spiritual identity so they can change their environment, because without a spiritual identity, your environment will give you your identity.
Wow. Wow. That was big, Dad. And do you see that a lot of teaching, what you just said, in leadership, or are we lacking that kind of knowledge to pass down to our sons? Is there a gap that we need to try to fulfill as quick as possible?
It definitely is, because it's so easy for relationships to get fractured and broken. It's so easy for the relationships to get fractured and broken. And then a person will stew in that brokenness, and the enemy be talking to their mind, where now you have to love and allow God to bring things back. You have to maintain who you are, because sometimes you can't go to people while they're at a certain place and God hasn't come to them first. The prodigal son had to come to himself before the father was able to do what he did for him. See, if the prodigal son hadn't come to himself, the father couldn't put a ring on him, put a robe on him, or put on something on his feet. He had to come to himself by his experiences so he could receive a word from the Father. So a lot of times, if they haven't come to themselves, they can't receive what you have to give them. So we have to allow God. That's why it says, with faith and patience, you inherit the promises. Sometimes we got to have the faith that patience hold out to let God do what he's going to do in their life. And then they'll come to you. Just like the prodigal son came back to the father. The father didn't go before time.
Right.
Because it would have been useless.
Right.
And so we have to be ready, able, and there to give them, because they're going to come back, because God is yet God, and God is working.
Yes. I talk about that too, Dad. I talk about, the three parables that Jesus used about being lost. He used sheep first. And when you're a sheep, you leave the 99 and go after it. When you're a coin, you search the house for it. You cut the light on. But when you're a son, you wait for him to return. All three are lost, but there are three different methods based on the maturity of where they are. And a lot of times we don't understand that. For sons, you have to wait for them to come to themselves. You don't wait for a sheep to come to himself. He won't.
No.
It's exactly. And when you lost in the house, there is a different maintenance to recover those lost in the house. Sure. There's a searching that have to go on. There's an investigation of when was this lost? When was the last time I seen it? When did you start feeling this way about your wife and husband? There's a sweeping that has to be done when you lost in the house. But when you're a son and you leave the house, there's a waiting. So I talk about that as well. Before we come to a close, we almost to our hour now. how do we restore fathers and sons back to the house? What is some of the wisdom that God has given you? Because one of the comments the lady said, Sister Owen, she said many times there's not fathers in the churches. And I run into there's not mothers in the church, and we're fathers too. But I look back sometime on the older, and we had the mothers that can bring so much wisdom and correction, and you don't see that as much, especially when you have a young church. You may not have the older mothers there. Most time when I saw mothers in the church, it's because the pastors was older, and so we're lacking that wisdom in the church. How do we restore that wisdom, whether it's father wisdom, that love, that teaching, to give some principles back or some sons? What is some of the restorations for that type of wisdom back in the church?
I think what it is, my own thing is that we begin to understand that is the purpose of the church. The church's purpose is to create a family environment of love, exhortation, and edification, along with relevant teaching. And then after that, we can establish a place of equipping. You can't equip people unless you have the right environment first. And that must be an environment of love, edification, where they feel a sense of security. And that's through mothers and fathers, because you got birth don't take place without a seed and a womb. You need the seed and womb for birth to take place. So you need the mother and father to create that environment of love, security, edification, exhortation, relevant teaching, so that now people can understand that they are equipped. And in their equipping, they're equipped to take the DNA of the house into the world and begin to expand light into dark places. So we got to create the DNA of the house. It has to be a family love environment so that relevant teaching doesn't seem as an attack. Because sometimes if there's no love established and you're teaching, people think you're attacking them because they don't feel loved. They don't feel affirmed. Oh. See, that has to be laid first so that teaching don't become attacking in their minds.
Man, that was so incredible.
The DNA of the house can go out.
I love that, Dad. I'm gonna borrow that. The DNA of the house, which is really the DNA of Christ. Would you say that?
Right. Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow. But the environment, because if the seed is not conducive to the environment, then the environment will destroy the potential of the seed.
Right.
Yeah. That's incredible.
That's what it is. And so we've been trying to create congregational members rather than family son members. God never had a congregation. He always had a family. There wasn't a congregation in the garden. There was a relationship between father and son. We're trying to create a congregational mentality. Then that's when we get into churchianity, and we moved away from the family aspect. And so that foundation has to be laid first and foremost.
Man, that was good. Thank you for that. I'm definitely going to put that in our manual. That the foundation of love must be laid first. Do you see a possibility for the older teachers who may be indoctrinated, who really, some people are fearful of sons and fathers relationships because they've been hurt and wounded? They're now always say that kings protect thrones, fathers give up thrones. Many times in churches, the problem is we don't have fathers, we have kings with a mentality. And so what's the strategy to help people shift their mindset that you won't be so protective, that you want to see your children or sons, or you want to be relational? A lot of leaders are not relational. They're not going to let you come over their house. They're not going to know their phone number. They're not going to let you be able to speak into their lives. And so there's giftings in the house, but you can't prophesy to me. You can't do that. And so what is some of the ways to make relationship more attractive or have the value that it should have? Because we don't value that relationship. We value, as long as you're faithful and pay your tithes and come on Sundays, that's all we require. We're not looking for that DNA of that house to affect that family and change that community in that city, in that nation that you teach. What are some of the ways that we can say, look, we got to redo this for the elders who seem to be locked or seem to be set in their ways, or they've been offended, they've been hurt. And so when they finally get the opportunity, I'm not building no relationship. You don't need to know me. You need to do what I say. That kind of parenting almost is in the church like it used to be in the home. You know, what would be some of the restorations for that? I'm really seeking restoration. I think one of the things that God has let me as one of the under shepherds of Divine Insight Ministries is to be able to shift how we see church, because we got to restore that kingdom mindset. We got to bring that back. We got to repent, for the kingdom is at hand. So what are some of the restorations for those who fear relationship? I don't trust people. I don't trust people. The last pastor took my members from me. The last musician quit on me. Whatever the case may be, we fear that intimate relationship. What are some of the ways to restore that?
Well, I think one of the ways is to understand your directive as a pastor or leader. The directive is to influence God's people towards God's purposes. Your directive ain't to build a big membership per se. It's to influence God's people towards God's purposes. And when you begin to understand that that's your directive, see, if your directive is to build a big congregation, then you got another method, another means that you use. You become impersonal. But to influence people, you got to be personal. See, so that's the difference. My mission is to influence you, not just to get you in the seat so I can have a big congregation. So you have to be personal. The people know my number, my wife's number. In fact, we didn't have 30, 40 people over our house to have dinner, watch the Super Bowl, play spades. We didn't done things like that, because that's just who we are. Ministry flows from who you are. And so you have to maintain that atmosphere. Now, a lot of times things get twisted, and people get twisted because they have their own personal agendas, and you just got to allow that to filter through. But the main thing is, when you know your call is to be influential on people, and the people that aren't under your influence or your metron of influence, don't worry. Somebody else got them. You're not just trying to get everybody in to say a sinner's prayer and to move on their way. God has that in order. You are to build that house to be a family of love, edification, and that you deposit into that individual life, that they grow and go forward. So the sum up what you're trying to say, if you've been operating from the old paradigm, you got to realize that paradigm has shifted. You got to realize that COVID has shifted a lot of that paradigm. You have to build influence and intimacy with people. And no matter if it's 20, 40, 200, 2,000, the basis is that have to be influential, where they feel a personal connection and they feel personally loved.
Wow. Well, Dad, thank you, man. This time is up. We got 4 minutes. We thank everybody for listening. We thank you for the comments. The comments have been great today. Dad, what's your Cash App? If people want to be listening.
My Cash App is Apostle Michael Scott. $ Apostle Michael Scott.
$ Apostle Michael Scott is the Cash App. Mm-hmm. God leads you to be a blessing to him. Please do that. Also, our Cash App is $ Apostle Robert Jenkins as well. So please give as God has laid on your heart to give. Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Pastor C. And so please do that. We are givers here. We thank God for this great wisdom that we've been able to hear today. Yeah. Let's get down and apply it to our lives to be better and to how to walk in leadership. So we will be addressing these issues all this week of how to walk in leadership, different aspects, different wisdom. We thank you, Dad. As always, you've been a blessing to me, man. I really glean from you. I don't want to make the mistakes that a lot of pastors and leaders that came before me did, and so, but I also don't want to sit back and criticize everything they did wrong, and during my time get there, I don't have any resources or any wisdom to make any difference. And so, a lot of times we just a better mistake, and sometimes we just a more polished error. and that it don't seem, and I don't want to do that. And so thank you for that wisdom you have given me and given us today. And we appreciate that. I know you've been through a lot to be able to be where you are in leadership, and been on both sides. When you've been on both sides, you kind of see things in different perspective. So thank you for that. We appreciate it. Any last words you want to say? Tell Mom I said hi. We love y'all so much. And you can give us the final remark, and then we'll close out.
I just want to say I thank God for this opportunity. I thank God for my spiritual son, Apostle Robert Jenkins. The Lord is really blessing him, taking places, and that's what it is. I want to see everybody that I'm connected with go higher and higher. You become a place and a time where you want to see people succeed, and that's what I want to do. Everyone, the ones in my church, my own natural sons, everybody, I want to see them succeed. And when you walk in humility, God brings your best your way. Amen. So God bless you. Thank you again, Apostle. Love you greatly and all that you're doing. God is tremendously blessing you. Continue to let him do that. God bless.
Thank you. Thank you. Did y'all hear that last line? He'll throw a nugget at you. He said, when you walk in humility, God will bring the best your way. Oh, that was great. Thank you. We love y'all. Thank you for the giving. Cash App, Apostle Michael Scott, Cash App, $ Apostle Robert Jenkins, PayPal. You know the way we give, and we appreciate that. We love you. God bless you. Walk in God's favor.
God bless.
There is a rising of the remnant. You are called to this rising, born for this rising. There is a rebirthing and a rebuilding in the kingdom. The remnant is like a burnt wall that is still standing, strong and courageous, committed to the commitment, walk in understanding and live in God's purpose. The remnant is bold and fearless. They go from purging to purity to process. There is a rising of the remnant, and the kingdom shall prevail.